Not real.
He is real.
Avon Barksdale that play on the wire is real.
Yeah, he real. He grew up with me.
Not an actor.
He ain't no damn actor.
There's a real Avon Barksdale.
There's a real Avon Barksdale.
Alive and free walking the street.
Alive and free, but it's one problem.
What?
Don't ever call him Avon.
His story ain't pretty. In fact, his story is pretty disturbing. Actor Wood Harris knows both sides of Barksdale's story. He plays the notorious Avon Barksdale character who was a powerful Baltimore gangster in the HBO series The Wire. Now, the show's creator calls him fiction.
This environment is real. People watch this show, they don't even be knowing. They think we're making it up stuff.
In real life, this is Nathan Avon Barksdale.
My baby mama live right there, but she ain't in the house. I sent for something cold to drink, but she ain't sent it. Good thing she probably come out acting crazy, you know? So, fuck my yellow jacket up, you know what I mean?
In real life, during the 80s, Barksdale was a notorious and resilient businessman. However, most people would call him a drug dealer or a drug kingpin. He had a knack for cheating death. Some of Barksdale's real violent battles are documented by former newspaper journalist David Simon. Now, Simon is also the creator of the critically acclaimed TV series The Wire. Simon says that The Wire is fiction. But it's more than coincidence that the names Barksdale, Marlowe, and others who are composite characters in the TV show are also familiar names Simon used to write about during his days as a reporter in Baltimore. Barksdale says he's okay if Simon and others use his name.
Come back with the water.
He's even okay if some of the stories he sees on TV are remarkably similar to stories he lived or knew about when he was a gangster. He talked to the show's producers about what life was like during his reign. But he also told them, you better not cross the line.
I was this crazy, man. I was in the joint. I was this crazy. I said to the man, don't make me no rat and don't make me no snitcher. Since y'all say, you know, it ain't nothing I can do to stop it, just don't do that and I won't kill your ass.
Barksdale's mother, Emma Barksdale Greer, says that she hasn't seen much of the show The Wire. The former school teacher, real estate investor, and mother of 5 boys says it's not her kind of show.
I saw part of it, but it was so embarrassing I never looked at it again. I couldn't relate to it.
Embarrassing hearing your son's name?
Well, you know, I just couldn't relate to it. You know, normally I just don't like stuff like that anyway.
You know, some people are uneasy that the real Barksdale's out of jail and walking the streets again. Perhaps they remember some of the things they heard and some of the things that Simon wrote about as a journalist. Maybe they remember some of the things documented on TV newscasts and in Simon's newspaper articles back in the 80s when Barksdale was in power.
The 2 suspects in the apartment, one a 16-year-old, the other, 25-year-old Nathaniel Barksdale, were injured in the gunfire.
In a few interviews, Barksdale talks to actor Wood Harris about his disturbingly unbelievable life. Leaving the studio for a more familiar environment, Barksdale also tells his story in an old boxing gym where he met some of his old friends. Always on the move, this time in one of his club hangouts, he shared some thoughts about old friends, fights with enemies, and an impressionable childhood. You know, Barksdale's life as a kid may have contributed to his actions as an adult. Those are the years when lives are shaped, and in many cases, lives are lost.
Some of the events was, first was the riots of '68. That had a lot to do with the way my mentality was shaped, the way I viewed the world, the way I viewed the police. It wasn't no officer friendly in my neighborhood.
Elaborate on that. That's one of the main questions too. Like elaborate on that. Like, well, the riots. What was it like? Because people might not be able to fathom it. You know, people might not be able to picture it.
But I got my first case during the riots of '68. Martin Luther King was gunned down, and
black cities were just going up.
Yeah, went crazy, right? And went crazy. You know, well, rebelled. They were mourning him, and that's how we do, you know, sometimes.
We act out, and we went and got us some of that money, man.
Barksdale grew up in Baltimore's roughest projects, and he found himself having to fight over and over and over again. Early on, fights were just downright petty and revolved around just his name.
Wait, you said it was Nathan Avon.
Nathan, man.
Nathan, my fault, Nathan.
Nobody call me no Avon.
My fault. Tell us about that, the birth name.
Oh, I had big trouble about that shit in the projects, man. They would, they would call you the Avon lady and shit.
Oh no.
So you got fight and shit all the time in the projects. In the Avon, everybody's tell the same corny joke.
So how they start calling you Bodie?
I was whooping niggas' asses for calling me Avon. You know what I mean?
Oh, he didn't like that. He was named after Avon Cosmetics.
Where'd that come from?
Avon Cosmetics, really. That's where it really came from. I used to sell Avon. I like Avon.
Well, did the kids tease you about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what would you tell them to do? Or how to handle it?
Like it's your name, you should be proud of it.
As Barksdale perfected his fighting skills, friends and enemies eventually discovered that saying his name Avon was just not a good idea. The name Avon gave way to the nickname Bodie. Now, although Barksdale says he doesn't really remember when or why people started calling him Bodie, his mom says her recollection is clear.
The name Bodie came from television. It was like the Bowie knife. Remember, it was an old show called Bowie, but instead of saying Bowie, I called him Bodie, and it fit him so well.
Barksdale didn't really care as long as they didn't call him Avon. The name Bodie just kind of stuck and would later become his nickname in the hood and a familiar name to cops. Barksdale grew up in Baltimore, not the Baltimore associated with the famed Inner Harbor. Visitors to Charm City are impressed with all it has to offer. In the non-tourist areas, it's a healthy mix of middle and upper income neighborhoods. Sometimes those neighborhoods are only a few blocks from areas in which Barksdale was more familiar. Those pretty neighborhoods were quite a contrast to Barksdale's world. The projects were Barksdale's playground and eventually his place of business. Now, in the hood, he learned some special skills, like how to survive on the street, how to understand the rules of conduct. However, his school teacher mom wanted a better life for her children, and she describes how she tried to expose young Barksdale to things outside of the projects. In school, that exposure landed Barksdale in some hot water.
We used to go to the museum and places like that, and they always had all these nude pictures. He drew a nude picture, and the teacher called me in. He had this nude woman. He was 5 years old, and she thought that was the worst thing. And I was trying to explain to her that's art, and it is. And when you go to the museum, mostly those nudists, you remember the old Greek nudists? They're nude. And I guess he must have liked it.
Like many parents, Barksdale's mom used to talk to Bodie about a lot of things.
It was good. It was all right. We used to have a lot of, we had a lot of fun. Come home, cook dinner, everybody sit around the table and talk about the events of the day, what they learned, what happened here and there. It was pretty good. We went out a lot. When he was 13 years old, I had just finished up community college and started at another school, University of Baltimore. So, and I was carrying like full credits. So I did have, and I just believed wasn't no police coming. He was going to school every day. He was getting good grades. You understand what I'm saying? So there was no reason to be alarmed. I got alarmed when the police broke the door down.
The young Barksdale's hood slowly started to overpower his mother's efforts to keep him on the straight and narrow. Now, she says she was just caught up with trying to maintain multiple jobs to make ends meet, divorce, and a dependency on her older sons in the family to care for young Barksdale while she worked. Keeping him out of trouble was quite a challenge. he began scheming to perfect his pickpocket hustle.
I beat a Vic for a while, and I had got away, got to the projects. And usually when you got to the projects, they would stop chasing you. Got to the projects, but it was this one cop, he was known in the projects, and he chased me and caught me. Yeah. He turned out to be a terrible motherfucker. He, years later, you know, he had killed a bunch of people and shit. They were scared of him. Dangerous pull. I lucked out. He didn't kill me.
But Barksdale had bigger plans than being the king of pickpockets. He wanted to make more money. He became a paper boy too. But one paper route just wasn't enough. At a young age, he demonstrated his business savvy and leadership skills. Barksdale says he organized his own group of boys to muscle out competition and seize territories of other paper boys over a wide area.
We were kids, and we had a gang. We were the 40 Thieves, right? And in the projects. And, you know, they sold, what, 3 or 4 major newspapers before we got a hold of it. It was some minor guys, some weaker guys. They had it. It was like 4 or 5 different, but for each one of those papers I told you, it was like 2 different crews of kids that controlled one of those routes, and we just consolidated it. We took it and made it, you know, work. But we brought them all in with us, though.
Oh, okay.
Nobody died, you know.
When Barksdale wasn't throwing newspapers, he was busy practicing his hustle. One led to a horrible tragedy.
He was about 11 years old. They were playing on the rec lot. And I was like in school. I had just started community college. And I was upstairs washing clothes, and they ran and told me he had had an accident. And what had happened, it was one of those, they used to have these x-ray buses. The city would send them out. You know those, I guess, anyway, just drive them. He was playing this game. The kids get on back of the bus, and then he back it up and they jump off. This is the way they told it to me. I always really wanted to know what happened.
Barksdale now reveals what he says really happened. He had been constantly stealing from a man who regularly drove through the neighborhood. He was even bold enough to steal the man's lunch and sit on the back of his vehicle to eat it. But on this day, the man just had enough. He managed to get into the vehicle fast, throwing it in reverse and smashing Barksdale's leg against the wall. Barksdale's foot was crushed. He eventually lost his foot. And several surgeries later, he lost his leg as well. You know, the newspaper clippings say, even with the loss of his leg, he moved extremely fast. It didn't stop Barksdale's activities, and it may have hardened him as a hustler, and he would discover later that it helped him in court. Hustling and newspaper routes didn't come close to satisfying Barksdale's needs and desire to have more money in his pocket. He seized the opportunity to become a drug runner and a lookout. Drug lieutenants like using them because typically they were so young and immune from adult prosecution. Their punishment, if they happen to be caught by the police, was short and sweet. I mean, we're talking a few months tops in a camp-like setting at that. They could quickly be back out on the street, and they earned their rite of passage. Punishment dished out by Barksdale's mentor was allegedly quite different. Newspaper reports say that major West Baltimore drug dealer Frank Harper is accused of using torture, fear, and murder to keep people in check. Unfortunately for Barksdale, learning the tricks of the trade from Harper came with big risks. The same news article says that Barksdale and 2 other boys were accused of stealing and not turning over all the money they collected to Harper's lieutenant. Barksdale denies they kept money that didn't belong to them. However, that wasn't the story that got back to Frank Harper.
What's going on, man?
Look, we got a problem, man. Bodie, Mirando, Geronimo, man, things out of order. It's crazy. We missing money.
What the fuck you mean we missing money?
Yeah, we missing money, a lot of money, man. Missing your money.
You ain't missing my money. What money? How much am I missing?
About 30,000, I think. Not sure.
Look, fuck all that. I want all them little motherfuckers. Bodie, Miranda, Ronnie Moe, whoever the fuck else be with them, man. You go get them, take them to the basement. I got something for them. Go take care of that, man.
Barksdale described what would happen next as being the scariest moment of his life.
A guy locked me in the basement. I was like 12, 11, and that guy locked me in the basement with some dogs, and they beat me up. I was a kid, you know. So that would have been like, you know, the scariest moment because I couldn't defend myself. I was a child. Yeah.
Frank Harper used dogs as a weapon. Each boy was abducted and forced down into a basement at gunpoint. Harper added another terrifying element: a vicious dog not in the best of moods. Barksdale was the last one picked up. When Barksdale arrived, one boy escaped. The rest of the boys had to make a choice: take a bullet to the head or face man's best friend.
You know, boys don't come with to their mothers with stuff like that. When I heard about that, she was in prison.
But the emotional scars left by the incident stayed with Barksdale like an open sore. It would be difficult for anyone to forgive an adult who puts a dog on a child. You know, even as Barksdale developed a skill for organization and his business savvy on a small scale, he learned some valuable survival skills from one of his favorite sports.
I've been boxing since I was like 9 years old. I've been interested in it. My dad was a fighter, grandfather too, and a bunch of my uncles, all my brothers. My mom, you know, she couldn't afford daycare, so she would leave us at the gyms, and like that, and that was how it turned out. I first met Larry Middleton at Nick Trotter's on the block, because that was the first gym I had stumbled into. He was like a dad to all of us, Larry Middleton. You know, nobody in the projects had a father, and you know, he brought a whole lot of new discipline to us that we wasn't used to, like the no cursing. You couldn't cuss while Larry was there. And I never saw Larry with a gun.
Larry Middleton is a former world-class heavyweight boxer. In his prime, he ranked in the top 10. He fought the likes of Larry Holmes and Jimmy Ellis. I mean, he was also the trainer of former heavyweight champ Hasim Rockman and sparring partner for Muhammad Ali. The man taught neighborhood kids how to fight, but he lectured them about being good citizens and never using the skills he taught them the wrong way. Middleton would even go to his boxer's home to team with his parents in an effort to keep his guys out of trouble.
Well, Bodie, he didn't warn them. They kind of didn't want me to come to their house. I hate somebody that behave that way. Once I be training someone, I want them to go out and do things right and correctly. You know, that sort of thing. So I talked to him about that. I always try to talk and change people around, you know, around.
I feel like I let him down. I do. I really do. I feel like I let him down because even though I didn't have any aspirations to become pro, you know, because I'm much too cute for that. And, you know, that's a joke, man. All right. I was never an advantage taker. You know, I never went out looking for some guy that I knew he couldn't do nothing, you know. But when we had this business disputes, it was the lesser of the two evils. I mean, you know, instead of putting my finger on him, I'm like, you know what I mean, strike him. And he get the message and he get the money and that type of thing.
Another one of his boxing mentors was Marvin McDowell. Now, he's a former lightweight champion, Maryland Hall of Fame inductee, and the owner of Umar's Boxing Gym. Like Middleton, McDowell also tried to steer the teenagers like Bodie away from trouble.
I know Bodie from boxing, you know.
Was he good?
He was all right, you know. I'm saying he could have been a whole lot better if he stuck with it, you know. But, you know, he was good with the hands. Now, somebody on the street, they had a problem. But, you know, somebody in an organized situation, as far as like I was in boxing, you know, with the techniques and everything, and running and getting in shape, it's a whole lot different than the street. You know, you hear things, you know, here and there, but I knew him for what he was doing in boxing, you know, and it just used to surprise me when I would hear, Bodie this, Bodie that. Man, that ain't the Bodie I know, you know.
But it was the Bodie Barksdale that the street knew all too well as he transitioned from hustler to young businessman who had a product in high demand.
I had 5 sons, 5 living sons, and my oldest son, and I worked a lot. So he went to school, he never hooked school. You know, he got pretty good grades in school. So I thought everything was good. I really thought everything was going good until I wound up in court.
You were speaking of a large settlement that Bodie received.
Yeah, and when he started buying all this stuff and spending all this money, I just assumed that it was that money. I didn't know anything about the drug deal and all that. I found out about that when they, you know, like I found out when they locked him up and started accusing him.
Barksdale says he was compensated in an undisclosed settlement for the incident that would unfortunately cost him his leg as a young child. Money was put in a trust that he would have access to when he reached a certain age.
I mean, you know, you can call it what you want, but I had to work 3 jobs, a couple of jobs to make ends meet and everything. So I might have had my head in the sand, you know, and by the time I realized it, it was too late.
Barksdale's transition from hustler to gangster was just getting started. Before the transition, he quickly discovered that the transition was not gonna be easy. Bodie Barksdale, as he prefers to be called instead of his birth name Avon, rose to power through violence, shrewd business savvy, and loyalty from both his crime and biological family. Violence on top of violence helped Barksdale carve out a huge territory to run his lucrative drug operations that brought in millions. But managing that territory was not easy. Bodie Barksdale has the scars to prove it. Barksdale claims he only dished out violence when he was on the defense. He says it was a matter of survival. Now, whether you believe him or not, regardless, there was no shortage of people gunning for Barksdale.
I've been shot more than 20 times, right? And I've been paralyzed. I was temporarily blind, and I got shot. Guys came to the hospital, shot me in the head. Came to the hospital? Yeah, and shot me in my head, and put it in my mouth, came out the back of my neck, right? And you know, I got shot a lot of times. That's so amazing. It was horrible getting shot.
No, that ain't a myth. He still got bullets in him. He was crippled. He was paralyzed for about 6, maybe a year. From what I was understanding, he was shaking, holding this guy's hand, shaking it, and some guys came up from behind him and started just, but he didn't die.
Barksdale is guarded when sharing specifics about violence he may have dished out when he says he was attacked by his enemies, even those incidents that are now public record. Although he's out of jail, he's still on probation, and he's not anybody's fool.
It ain't no statute of limitation on murder, man. Hey, ain't no statute of limitation on murder, man.
But his mom can recall one shooting that she says her son described to her as an accident.
He had shot this guy in the leg and he bled to death. Okay? But that was supposed to have been an accident. It wasn't, I mean, I don't know until today if it was drug related.
And the 16-year-old Barksdale wound up with a suspended sentence for manslaughter. Old newspaper articles give a small glimpse of accusations against Barksdale and his lieutenants. Court records documenting numerous charges, incidents, and convictions reveal a spiraling upward trend of violence associated with Barksdale and his operation. As Barksdale built his independent drug empire, he had a low tolerance for mistakes and zero tolerance for messing with his money.
And what would happen to people who didn't do what they were supposed to do?
Well, you know, if it was a situation where he didn't do what he was supposed to do, and he was putting everybody at risk, you know, everybody, because all of the guys with me, you know, we were all the alpha males in our family. We were the guys that were the breadwinners, the earners in our family, you know, because dad wasn't home for nobody. And we were dads. So, you know, you put, when you fuck around and sleep on a job, you put me at risk.
Everybody, the whole everything.
Yeah, no school clothes, no Christmas, none of that, you know. So, when he put everything at risk, he pretty, you know, hard knock. Let me put it that way.
Victor Smith was one of Barksdale's lieutenants.
This Victor Vito Smith, this was the youngest guy in my crew, in our crew, right? And he was like 14 or 15. He was a serious man, but he was a, you know, teenager. Anyway, and we helped, we ran this territory together. Us and some more of our friends and family members, we ran these projects.
But some of his friends just could not understand why he would associate with someone who had a reputation like Barksdale.
I mean, you know, a lot of dudes was like, why you want to work with him? I guess they were scared and whatnot, but shit, I mean, everything was right, money was right, and you made a lot of money with Brody. Yeah, I mean, you know.
He was a scary guy also.
Damn near the whole town was scared to death of him anyway, so, I mean, we was gonna do what we was gonna do, so wasn't nobody gonna stop us from getting money where we was gonna go at.
Barksdale's lieutenants were very loyal, but the man who put the dog on Barksdale, Frank Harper, had a loyal group of lieutenants as well. Loyalty on both sides would eventually lead to deadly confrontations.
That's right. Time to die, motherfucker, time to die. Time to die, motherfucker, time to die.
Those who know the story say the embarrassed man vowed revenge and put a hit on Barksdale's head. It was a bounty that had no shortage of hunters.
Hey, with a girl, you need to hurry up and get down here right now. He right here, let's get him.
Acting on a telephone tip, the man who Barksdale embarrassed and two other gunmen waited outside for Barksdale to exit the building with a companion.
Yeah. That's right. Time to die, motherfucker, time to die. Time to die, motherfucker, time to die. Time to die, motherfucker, time to die.
To the shooter's amazement, Barksdale survived like he's done so many times before. The shooters found out, they went up to Church Holmes Hospital emergency room, and as he lay there fighting for his life, they proceeded to finish the job. Barksdale survived, like he's done several times before.
There ain't no shit I want to happen again, right?
You got a very, very specific purpose, let's put it that way. I don't think it's...
Barksdale's loyal lieutenants kept the operation going while Barksdale recovered. However, Barksdale's lieutenants were motivated to avenge the shooting. They allegedly knew one of the shooters and didn't wait long to take action. An alleged contract killer was later found shot to death in a rat-infested basement. It was another battle in a war that was far from over. The violence just kept escalating because of personal grudges, territory battles, and because there was a whole lot of money at stake.
Describe the kind of money your operation brought in, so people know.
Big money. Lots and lots of money. A friend of mine, Melvin, he described it as weigh money. Wow. That's money you have to weigh. You ain't got time enough to count it. You have to weigh it. Now, we done well. We moved it was between never less than 37. Never less than 37 a day. No, a couple times it was like 25, 26,000.
A day?
But, yeah. But,
many years ago?
Oh, this was more than 25 years ago.
See, people make $35,000 a year now, on average?
No, I'm talking about daily. This was.
No, I know. That's what's incredible.
David Simon's article on drug trafficking says court records indicate Barksdale's crew turned a $100,000 drug buy into $500,000 in retail drug sales in a week. The preferred product? Heroin. Heroin made it to the streets of Baltimore from many sources.
What's going on, Nick?
How you doing, buddy? Good.
Okay. You know, I bought that money for you, the 1.4 million. But all, plus I got another 6.
You're doing good, man. You're doing good. I got 20 more for you. 96%, 97 pure.
That's good, but you think you could cut me a cheaper price? 140 good, but 120 to work with it.
Are you fucking crazy, man? You don't make money, you don't have it?
Shit, I'm taking money.
I hear that you got problems outside. Is that true?
It's true, but it's not gonna affect our business. My problems ain't gonna affect nothing we did.
Sure.
I'm gonna take care of that. It's cool?
Okay, okay.
All right.
Okay.
Baby girl, what Nick got?
In the back.
Okay. George, Nick's money, $2 million.
All right, man. Wait for me in the front.
All right.
You see that?
Yeah, that's it.
Better than the last shit?
Right.
You got something here, man. For real.
Woo! I did what I did. You know I had to get paid.
Baby girl, you take it easy, all right? All right.
Oh, the dope was a bomb. The dope was a bomb, man. There's nothing spitting up, man. Right? See, the product, this is another thing. See, your age group, that's that crack age. See, my age group, it was heroin. It was the drug of choice, was heroin, smack. And I was a dope boy, you know. So, worked with Scramble. Right, that's heroin with a byproduct, or several byproducts. Yeah, quinine and nita. Yeah, it's Italian baby laxative and quinine. It's a big byproduct, right? You would come out with like 6% real dope, but those other two byproducts enhance the whole of the package. Yeah.
So you probably made more profit on the cut because you was only using the small.
It enhanced it, so it enhanced it in every way.
So people wanted to get with it.
Barksdale says he wasn't addicted to drugs, but
I like the bitches too, though. I got, but it was mostly the money and the power.
it was an addiction he liked. It was also an addiction protected by using traditional and innovative ways to defend his money-making turf. Now, one of those ways was through the delivery of pizzas.
Here it is right here, world famous pizza. You see how much it look like a pizza? All right. And as kids, we would take these to the top floor, usually or the 14th floor. And when the cops came in or when our rivals came in, we would slide them off the balcony or out the fence. And the sound of this motherfucker from hitting cement from 14 flights up, like a bomb. Man, it's life-changing. I don't care what the fuck you were doing before that moment, you start reconsidering your options. Well, maybe I should do something else. But let me to this. Motherfucker dropping something like this, you know, I myself, none of the pieces I delivered, I can't remember ever hitting anybody, right? But I know it happened so much, right? But yeah, that's the deal, dog. This is the world famous pizza.
And you're right, it ain't from Chi-Town. That's a Baltimore special.
Yeah, deep dish for your
deep
ass.
dish.
Yeah.
Special delivery too. That's what's really different, the delivery process.
Yeah,
Come
the
from
delivery.
15th floor.
Yeah.
Or the 14th.
Exactly, 14th floor, man.
It was a way to send messages to people who weren't welcome. Barksdale's rival, Frank Harper, didn't sell pizzas, but he sold a bunch of items at his grocery store. On this day, assassins came shopping for Harper. It was on Harper's turf that his reign came to an end. It was an old-fashioned ambush.
Yeah. That's right. Time to die, motherfucker, time to die. Time to die, motherfucker, time to die.
Barksdale ended up in court, charged with the murder of his childhood mentor and adulthood rival. He was found not guilty. One reporter says the jury could not believe that a wheelchair-bound invalid could be behind such a plot. He had successfully used the loss of his leg as a weapon against the judicial system. He didn't walk out of the courtroom, but he walked away from the charge, and it wouldn't be the last time. This frustrated his enemies and the police. Former homicide police detective Oscar Requier.
We have a lot of problems with juries here in Baltimore City, you know. As far as the credibility as a police officer, a lot of people don't put too much stock in the police officers, you know. But unfortunately, you know, a lot of them, they find them not guilty or hung juries, you know. With the jury system, we do have some problem with them, you know.
Barksdale's mother said he left home at age 18. She started hearing more and more things about Bodie that she just did not want to believe.
He's a man, what could I say?
Barksdale spent a lot of time in court. It was not unusual for the prosecution to use its muscle and efforts to get unwilling witnesses to testify. Now, the state wanted to prosecute a man for trying to kill Barksdale in a previous shooting. Barksdale refused to testify. His brand of ethics had a serious disdain for snitches. So instead of testifying, Barksdale stunned the court with a surprise attack on the man, knocking him unconscious with his metal cane. Barksdale got 30 days for the assault. During the time that Barksdale was operating in Baltimore, drug-related crimes was sometimes all over the newspaper headlines and the television news coverage.
And the bloodstains show where the man's body was lying just a few feet away.
The vast majority of the coverage, though, had nothing to do with Barksdale or his rivals. Much of the coverage was not even related to drugs.
The woman's 8-year-old son didn't want Legrone to leave. The child allegedly grabbed the policeman's service revolver and shot Legrone in the chest. The state's attorney's car was stolen twice last month, first from in front of his home, then from this repair garage parking lot on Dolefield Avenue.
Cosell denounced Colt owner Robert Irsay and other team owners who at will pick up their franchises and leave town.
Police had their hands full with a variety of crimes, just like other big cities. Still, they knew that targeting their efforts at drug-related crimes could have a big impact on lowering the city's crime rate. They also knew that as quick as one drug trafficker went down or went to jail, another would emerge, usually through acts of violence. Barksdale knew it too. He had lots of enemies, including those who were left from Harper's people. The grudges lingered. Whether he was a target or shooting at targets himself, Barksdale continued to be a thorn in the side of the police. His feelings about the police are deeply rooted from what he claims he experienced early on in his criminal career.
So tell me how you felt about the cops in the projects.
Brutal. You know, and where I come from, you know, the whole protect and serve thing, that's a joke. It's a joke. Well, you know, where I come from, the cops were like slash stick-up kids, slash hitman, slash extortionists, you know, and, you know, cops were not nice people.
Very corrupt, sound like.
Yeah, very, very corrupt. And even the ones that weren't, the corrupt ones actually were easy to get along with.
Because you could throw a couple of dollars
You could throw a couple of dollars at them and you were cool.
Former homicide detective and now Fraternal Order of Police Vice President Oscar Requier takes issue with Barksdale's characterization of cops as a whole.
We have had some officers have fallen short,
This homicide officer is a Bronze Star decorated retired cop who worked in the homicide unit when Barksdale was active. Now, even before Barksdale's rise to power, as a rookie officer, Requier made headlines when he gunned down a robbery suspect near a well-known barbershop owned by a prominent Baltimorean. Oscar's friends called him Rick, or Bunk. Producers of The Wire created a character also named Bunk, played by actor Wendell Pierce, shown here with the real Bunk. Friends see some similarities beyond the name and their sense of humor.
All right, on the series now, as you notice, years ago I used to smoke cigars and also drink Glenlivet. Matter of fact, they asked me about that. David said a lot of the characters were fictional, but like I said, David stayed with us for over a year, and he knew us. He knew the places we used to hang, the bars we used to go to after we was off duty. Like I said, the rap sessions we used to have. So he knew all the guys. He knew how we felt about certain things. He knew our nicknames or whatever, So
as you can see, Simon spent a lot of time with the Baltimore police.
Some of the guys, they didn't particularly care how they were portrayed on The Wire. I know it's one particular officer who's retired now. He's portrayed as a woman. He said it's fiction. A lot of it's fiction, but there's a lot of characters in there in truth, like Barksdale.
The police seem to like Simon, but for obvious reasons, Barksdale was a whole nother story. They certainly didn't like his past criminal activities, and they say his claims of police corruption are just overblown.
The system itself has been quite, it's been swift and severe with them as far as sentence is concerned.
Bunk also discounts what several former drug dealers call the pit. Barksdale and others say police looked the other way in one area called the pit. Now, in The Wire, it was called Amsterdam. They say it was an area where open-air drug trafficking, among other things, was allowed without prosecution. The Wire portrayed it as an experiment to contain drug trafficking in a certain area to keep it from spilling over into other areas of the city. Some people argue that this was a good idea. Bunk calls it fiction.
I take objection with that. I don't believe the police department ever condoned this. I know they have never condoned the selling of drugs. They would actively enforce any area where there was selling of drugs. This is a myth to the so-called dealers.
The drug-related killings on the streets of Baltimore just went on and on. Police decided to employ an additional strategy. Now, while police kept a visible presence on the streets, they also employed undercover strategies involving surveillance and wiretaps against some unsuspecting dealers.
They were on top of the hospital filming us. And most of the people in my organization, they got families. They got brothers, baby mamas, cousins and stuff. And they all work for University Hospital. And they work for the surrounding John Hopkins Hospital, the surrounding hospitals, and they work downtown and stuff. So they would be there when the cops would be setting up, or they would be the person that the cop would be talking to, asking, can they surveil us? And where we get back, or I would find out from the cops that we were paying.
Still, the police were awfully proud of the results they got from the surveillance. Breaking the code of sophisticated alphanumeric pager systems used by the dealers to communicate was a challenge. Contract killings, revenge killings, and plots against rivals raged throughout the projects, partially because in drug trafficking, sometimes dealers had to kill or be killed. Taking a rival out before he took you out was just part of survival. Sometimes the method of execution was reminiscent of what drug dealers saw in James Cagney Hollywood gangster movies. It wasn't Hollywood that influenced Barksdale. It was what he experienced in real life as a child and later as an adult. Experience had taught him to never let his guard down. He knew the bigger the profits he made, the bigger the risks. Plot after plot unfolded with either Barksdale or his money as key targets.
That motherfucker, right? And we going there, we getting rid of everybody. Nobody can live, you dig?
Right. We gotta kill everybody, man. I'm not having them niggas come back, acting like,
Cause that nigga a fool, man.
Hold up, we can't just go in there straight killing.
Right.
We can't just go in there straight shooting because they gonna, you feel me? It's gonna be a gunfight.
Right.
Me and her can go in there and distract.
But how many dudes is in there to just
But how we
distract?
go, I don't know how many people in there.
Right.
We just gonna go in there and just go to the bar and get a drink.
Right.
And we gonna sit back. They're gonna come over and talk to us. They do that all the
That's
time.
what they do.
But how long that's gonna take?
As long as it need to take. We need to get rid of these motherfuckers, right?
Right, but we need to do it fast.
Ain't no fast.
Chill out,
If we can't distract them, then what's
We
the use of doing
distract,
that?
but what's the point of
If
us
it
sitting
take
here
us a
drinking
whole
with
hour, if it take us an hour to distract them, then that's how long it's gonna take. We need to distract them.
So come on, all right, so check this out. How we gonna distract?
We're gonna go to the bar and sit down and get a drink.
Right.
We're gonna start talking to them.
Right.
I mean, they kind of rude sometimes. I mean, they're gonna come over and talk to us anyway.
That's how they beat them.
They gonna, just gonna sit there and
But
talk
we
to
gotta
them.
let them in though. So how we gonna do that?
I'm gonna go use the bathroom.
Right.
Well, what we can do is, we can let you in through the door. They know we dance. Me and Sweetie dance in there, so what we
They
can do
gonna
is
ask
just change
us
our
to dance.
clothes.
Or we can just
Let
act like
y'all
we're gonna
in.
dance.
All right, so what's the cue when we start popping?
Where's that money, right? They supposed to have the money somewhere, right?
Right.
So we gonna ask them where the money at.
Money,
They are. Can we get some drinks, please? Can I get a drink? We just came in here to get a drink.
Real quick, please.
Come here.
What are you doing?
Shut up. I need you to dance from.
I ain't about to fucking dance shit.
Bitch, you gonna get up there and dance.
You about to dance my back. Stop.
Get your monkey asses up there and dance. It's you a funny, baby. You the shit, bitch. Honestly.
Come here. Look at here. That's what I'm talking about, bitch.
Can
I go change my clothes? Huh? Can I go change? I don't feel comfortable. Can I go change?
Now, these ladies convinced their admirers that they could really put on a show if they were just allowed to change clothes. Now, check this out. What they didn't know is that Barksdale had the place under surveillance and that his whole crew was on guard in other parts of the club as well. Before returning to the dance floor, the fellas didn't know that they secretly let gunmen into the building through the back door. Now, the ladies returned all sexy and dressed up, ready to put on a show. But after a few minutes of teasing and playing around, one woman gave the cue for the gunmen and themselves to go for the money and wipe out all witnesses.
Where the fuck is the money?
The intruders took out the entire group and headed for the exit. They didn't expect another contingent of Barksdale's crew to be waiting outside. The only survivor of the plot escaped death, but not punishment. Torture was sometimes the tool of choice, used against enemies to extract information and to teach them a lesson. In one case documented by news organizations, Barksdale and his crew are accused in a horrific and lengthy torture and attempted murder. They were accused of abducting 3 people who they thought had come to seek revenge for the murder of 2 people. Now, one of those people was allegedly a well-liked retired drug dealer, and deal maker named Joe Johnson, better known as Proposition Joe. Now, Proposition Joe was also a likable character who was always making deals on the show The Wire. A hot, burning curling iron and lit cigarettes were used to burn the bodies and the faces of the captured. The apartment was described as a torture chamber. News reporters document the early hours of the crime before all the facts were known.
It was 5:45 this morning when the police were summoned to the Murphy Homes projects. They found a number of people inside one apartment. All had been shot or stabbed. There was blood on the walls. The back room looked like it had been ransacked.
Some people were held in this apartment against their will, at gunpoint, knife point. And after a period of time, apparently they initiated a struggle to escape, and when they did that, that's when all the shooting and stabbing took place.
After the shooting occurred, 2 people were able to get out. One ran to Martin Luther King Boulevard, where he flagged down a police car. Another ran to the 1100 block of Argyle Avenue, where that person knocked on someone's door for help. Police say 3 people, 28-year-old Michael Stokes, 22-year-old Mira Franklin, and her cousin Timothy Franklin, 33, apparently went to the Murphy homes last night where they knew they could buy drugs. All 3 were assaulted and brutally beaten inside the apartment, police think, after something went wrong with the drug deal. Then, early this morning, after all 3 had been held against their will, Stokes apparently went for one of the assailants' guns. That's when all the shooting took place. The 2 suspects in the apartment, one a 16-year-old, the other, 25-year-old Nathaniel Barksdale, were injured in the gunfire. Police are with them at the hospital. In West Baltimore, Michael Shockett, News Scene 2.
It was this incident that ended up finally forcing Barksdale off the street. Barksdale and 3 of his lieutenants were arrested at the scene and later charged, including Victor Smith, who refused to snitch. Smith shares more about Barksdale as he refers to other incidents unrelated to the torture case.
He made me do everything I was dead just to get that all out of it. But I mean, he was cool working with me and shit. He was fair. Well, basically, he taught me the game. You know what I'm saying? Everything I really learned, I learned from him. And he was straight up with me, and you know what I mean? So it was all good. I mean, it was a good opportunity for us, what we was doing. It was the best thing for me at that time.
Smith and 2 others served less than 5 years in a plea bargain agreement. However, one lieutenant, Roland Bell, did not go down so easy. He wound up in an intense shootout with police and was arrested. During interrogation, he argued he wasn't even around during the torture, but he ended up receiving 100 years in prison. And as for Barksdale?
Avon Barksdale. Based on your plea agreement, I sentence you to 15 years in prison.
Of course, police were not happy with the deal.
I'd tell you 15 years, that's a real light sentence. Me personally, knowing his character, what I've heard about him, you know, it should have been a lot more, you know.
Police weren't the only ones unhappy with the sentence.
My reaction was I was completely destroyed, really. I couldn't believe it.
You know, as they say, all good things must come to an end. That is, good things from Barksdale's perspective. But in the world of Bodie Barksdale, what was considered an extraordinary run as a drug kingpin was far from over when he finally went to jail.
Well, mainly with my thing, it was mostly loyalty. Neighborhood friends and stuff. We were crew. We were in the same gang as, you know, children and stuff, so we had pretty good solidarity. But the way I mostly was able to keep my thing in check is that nobody snitched, nobody told. And that went down the street legend, like, you know. You get with them boys, they think it's correct, they think tight, you know. And nobody snitched, so, you know, we were the team people wanted to be on, you know, whether we was inside or out.
Even with loyal associates sprinkled throughout the prison, Barksdale still found himself in a fierce struggle. It evolved into less about drug territory and into more about survival in the prison, because there were plenty in prison even more notorious than Barksdale.
It was intense, but I mean, you know, Baltimore always won because it was our joint. This was a Maryland penal system. I got a case for killing a DC guy in the joint.
Bodie's cellmate at one time was Aaron Rashid. Now out of jail, he met us at Umar's boxing gym in West Baltimore. And he gives candid and unique insight into how Barksdale operated in prison.
On the street, and I've known Bodie probably 30 years, and me and Bodie are good. On the street and in the joint, no problems, never had no altercations. If we disagreed, you know what I mean, it wasn't one of those things where we fell out. I ain't never owed him no money, thank God. But in the joint, Bodie plays a different game with the control thing. He's more deceptive in how he deals with people. He deals with them with a lot of humor and joking to throw them off. And his level of control, he does it with mass manipulation, meaning he plays on people's intelligence to a degree where he gets them to do the little things he needs them to do. But if he feels that you have infringed upon him or trying to take advantage of him because of his handicap, you got a major problem.
It's easy in some ways because, you know, I got pussy, I got drugs, I got people, you know, I still was controlling things from the joint, but it was hard because my daughter would see me and she was graduating from the 6th grade. The next time I would see her, you know, she's graduating high school, you know?
Whether you believe him or not, as the months and years passed and Barksdale's power eroded on the streets, his focus also started changing to what he would do once out of prison. After all, drug dealing wasn't his only business.
I was doing a real estate thing, my family business. A lot of houses and stuff. That's the business you're talking about, right, man? Huh?
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Unless you want to tell me some more other than that.
Oh, no. Well, no. Well, that's where I really got my, what you call it, epiphany. That's where I got my epiphany. You like that word, right?
Yeah, I like that.
I just learned that. That's where I got my epiphany at, man. You know, I had a Martin Luther King moment, man. You know, I didn't want to hurt nobody else. And, you know, shiny things didn't mean that much to me no more.
But your operation was still in full bloom when you was incarcerated, right?
Yeah, well, I was still strong.
Right.
If that's what you mean. I mean, because in my situation, if I had lost any of my street strength, right, that's tantamount to suicide.
Now, in the television series The Wire, there's a character named Stringer, and he was a close associate of Barksdale and ran drug operations on the street while Barksdale was in jail.
The real Stringer?
Yeah.
We ain't never been friends. We ain't never been friends, man. You know, no, we ain't never been friends. And we ain't never been friends. And we wasn't even really associates. I mean, he knows who I am, I knew who he was. In fact, we had beef. We had beef that went on for years and years, and finally, you know, it withered, you know, it went away.
Dissolved away.
Yeah.
I knew Stringer grew up in the projects with, but I wouldn't recognize Stringer today if I saw him. Because, you know, he's grown old, he's an old man now.
Some of Barksdale's associates served time and have started new lives. Others, like Marlo Bates, are still trying to get out.
Close personal friend of mine, my beloved.
Marlo was portrayed as a rival who orchestrated a hostile takeover of Barksdale's territory when Barksdale went to prison.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Marlo's in prison, isn't he?
Yes.
I don't know. See, I don't keep track of them. We just don't have nothing in common.
Marlo is in a Maryland prison. His real story is chilling and remarkable. While incarcerated, he's become an inventor and an author. He's the focal point of a future installment of Legends of the Unwired.
Oh, the regrets I have about my past life, like everybody, I mean, you know, some of the pains, trials and tribulations, I look back in retrospect and I wish I had avoided them. But the ones I really have regret about are, you know, the ones that cause irreversible actions.
You know, Barksdale often brags about extraordinary potential in the projects and about those who return to Baltimore roots in efforts to give back to the community.
Yeah, these are the same projects where Carmelo Anthony grew up in, too. All of us grew up right here.
I met Sam Cassell.
Yeah, but Sam's from the other side.
Oh, okay.
He's from the other side. Well, it ain't but what, a few blocks from here.
Now, whether they grew up in Bodie's hood or not, they still visit in efforts to help steer youngsters down the right path. Now, that holds true for Kevin Lyles as well. He's one of the most powerful men in the music industry. On this day, he joins Mello, Cassell, and others who converged on Baltimore for Mello's charity basketball tournament and fundraiser to benefit underprivileged youngsters. This festive occasion is called the Hood Movement. Hood stands for Holding Our Own Destiny, and it promotes peace, responsibility, and empowerment.
Church Community Basketball League. We're trying to get all the brothers to get brothers off the street.
Barksdale buys into programs encouraging others to choose a path much different than the one he chose. However, admittedly, he is flattered by a contingent of admirers who recognize him and even know his birth name of Nathan Avon Barksdale.
Trying to be like him when I do. His name Nathan, my name Nathan. My name is Dante Barksdale. I'm one of the Barksdales. I'm Bodie Barksdale's nephew. Our mission goal is to stop the killings and the shootings in our neighborhood and toward the people and the children and the young people that killings and shootings is not normal. You know, I grew up in a family, you dig what I'm saying, where it was the norm because, you know, growing up, being ignorant, you think, you know, you gotta go hard, you gotta do this, do that in the street. You know, man, my mission really is just to, you know what I'm saying, make everybody be family again. You dig what I'm saying? Make sure no killings, no shootings happen. We got a thing called canvassing, what we do in the program. We go out into the neighborhood and we target kids that's 14 to 25, you know, if they recently just been released from prison, we know that they shoot guns. And how we find that out is that we go in the neighborhood, we be nosy, you know, we street niggas, so we know what's going on in the street. And before we hear about it and we hear something drastic that happened, what we do is we interrupt, we intervene. You dig what I'm saying? And then we create alternatives for them. We get them little jobs, GEDs, you know what I mean? We even